They say war reveals who you really are, that when the bullets start flying and blood soaks the ground, all the pretense falls away, and you see the truth of a person. Staff Sergeant Michael Torres believed that. He'd seen it proven 100 times over 3 deployments. Good men crumbling under pressure, cowards finding courage they didn't know they had. And on one God-forsaken night in a valley that didn't appear on any map, he discovered exactly who he was. The mission was supposed to be simple. His squad, 8 soldiers, battle-tested and tight-knit, was tasked with securing a compound where insurgent leaders were planning coordinated attacks across the region. Intelligence was solid. Surprise was on their side. Get in, neutralize the threat, get out. Textbook operation. But nothing about that night went according to the textbook. They hit the compound at 0200 hours. Darkness, silence. Then all hell broke loose. The insurgents were ready, waiting. Someone had tipped them off, and what should have been a quick strike turned into a firefight that lit up the valley like the 4th of July. Michael's team took cover behind a low wall as bullets chewed through the air above them. Private Jackson took a round to the shoulder. Corporal Williams caught shrapnel from a grenade. Michael moved between them, applying pressure, administering morphine, barking orders over the chaos. This was his job. He was a combat medic. He saved lives while everyone else took them. Torres, we need suppressing fire on that position, Lieutenant Garrett shouted, pointing to a machine gun nest that had them pinned. I'm working on Jackson. Jackson can wait. We need that gun silenced or we're all dead. Michael looked at Jackson. The kid was 19, bleeding badly. His face was white with shock. 2 minutes, Michael said. Give me 2 minutes. Garrett swore but nodded. Michael worked fast, packing the wound, securing a tourniquet, pumping Jackson full of enough painkillers to keep him functional. Around them, the world was fire and noise and death. Then Sergeant Hayes, their heavy weapons specialist, took out the machine gun nest with a well-placed grenade. The explosion lit up the compound. For a moment, everything went quiet, except for the ringing in their ears. Move up, Garrett ordered. Clear those buildings. They advanced, building by building, room by room. It was brutal work, close quarters, no room for hesitation. Michael saw men he'd shared meals with become something else in those moments. Became the kind of people who could kick in a door and pull a trigger without blinking. He didn't judge them. This was war. This was survival. They cleared the main structure, found weapons caches, intel documents, evidence of planned attacks, but no high-value targets. The leaders had already fled. Damn it. Garrett slammed his fist against a wall. They knew we were coming. That's when they heard it. A sound from the adjacent building. Movement. Someone was still here. The squad surrounded the structure. Michael stayed back with the wounded, but he could hear everything. The shouted commands, the door being breached, then gunfire, brief, controlled, then silence. Torres, get in here. Garrett's voice, urgent. Michael grabbed his medkit and ran. Inside, the room was destroyed. Bullet holes everywhere, blood on the floor, and in the corner, slumped against the wall, was an enemy combatant, mid-20s, wearing tactical gear, bleeding from multiple gunshot wounds to the chest and abdomen. But he was alive. He came out shooting, Garrett explained. We put him down. Check him for intel, anything useful. Michael knelt beside the wounded man. His hands moved on autopilot, assessing wounds, checking vitals, calculating survival odds. The insurgent's eyes were open, conscious, staring at Michael with a mix of pain and defiance. He's going into shock, Michael said. Needs immediate medical attention or he's dead in 10 minutes. So let him die, Williams said. He just tried to kill us. Michael looked up. That's not how this works. The hell it isn't. This is war, Torres. He made his choice, and I'm making mine. I'm a medic. I save lives. Garrett stepped forward. Torres, we don't have time for this. We're extracting in 5 minutes. That man is enemy combatant. He has no value to us. Leave him. He's wounded. I can stabilize him. I said leave him. That's an order. Michael's hands were already working, cutting away the insurgent's gear, exposing the wounds. 3 entry wounds, at least 1 exit. Lung was probably collapsed. Internal bleeding. Bad, but savable. Torres, Garrett's voice was steel now. Step away. We're leaving. Give me 5 minutes. We don't have 5 minutes. Reinforcements could be coming. We need to move now. Michael pulled gauze from his kit, started packing the wounds. The insurgent gasped, coughed blood. His hand shot out and grabbed Michael's arm, not attacking, pleading. Please, he whispered in broken English. Please, help. Michael met his eyes, saw fear there, saw a man who didn't want to die. Williams pulled his sidearm. Torres, move. I'll finish this. Michael put himself between Williams and the wounded man. You're not shooting an unarmed, wounded enemy. That's a war crime. Then let nature take its course. Stop treating him and let's go. Can't do that. Why the hell not? He'd let you die. Hell, he tried to kill us 20 minutes ago. Maybe, but I'm not him. Garrett grabbed Michael's shoulder. Mike, listen to me. I know what you're feeling, but we have wounded. Are wounded. Jackson needs real medical attention. Williams needs stitches. We need to get them to the evac point. Every second we stay here puts them at risk. You want to save a life. Save theirs. It was a good argument. A logical argument. Michael looked at Jackson, pale and trembling. Looked at Williams, blood seeping through his bandages. His brothers, his team, the people he'd sworn to protect. Then he looked at the insurgent, the enemy. The man who moments ago was trying to kill them. I can stabilize him in 3 minutes, Michael said. Get him to a point where he won't bleed out. Then we go. No, we go now. That's final. Michael didn't move, just kept working, packing wounds, setting up an IV line with the last of his saline. His hands were steady, even though his heart was hammering. Torres, I will have you court-martialed for insubordination. If you don't, then court-martial me. Michael's voice was quiet but firm. I became a medic to save lives, not to decide which ones matter. If I let this man die when I could save him, then what the hell am I? What are we fighting for? If not the idea that every life has value. The room went silent except for the insurgents, labored breathing. Hayes spoke up. LT, we're already here. 3 minutes won't kill us. Let him work. Garrett looked at Hayes, at the rest of the squad, saw something in their faces. Maybe respect, maybe doubt, maybe just exhaustion. 3 minutes, then we move, with or without you. Michael worked faster than he'd ever worked. Stabilized the bleeding, inflated the collapsed lung with a needle decompression, wrapped the worst wounds. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't perfect, but it was enough. The insurgent would live, at least long enough to be found by his own people, or captured by a follow-up unit. Done, Michael said. He stood, grabbed his gear. Let's go. They moved out, brought to the extraction point. The helicopter came. Jackson and Williams were loaded first, then the rest of the squad. As Michael climbed in, he looked back at the compound, thought about the man he'd left behind, alive, because of a choice he'd made. Back at base, Garrett pulled him aside. "That was stupid, Torres. I know. Could have gotten us killed. I know. But," Garrett paused, "maybe it was also the right thing. I don't know anymore. Lines keep getting blurrier out here." 2 weeks later, Michael was called into the battalion commander's office. He expected disciplinary action, expected consequences. Instead, he found something else. Colonel Martinez sat behind her desk, a file open in front of her. "Sergeant Torres, tell me about the insurgent you treated during Operation Steelhawk." Michael explained. "The firefight, the wounded enemy, the choice he made." Martinez listened without interrupting. Then she closed the file. "Intelligence intercepted communications from the local insurgent network. Turns out the man you saved was named Rashid, mid-level commander. He survived. And 3 days ago, he reached out through back channels with information, locations of weapon caches, names of high-value targets, intel that's already prevented 2 major attacks." Michael stared at her. "Why would he do that?" "According to our sources, he said that an American soldier saved his life when he should have let him die. That kind of mercy, it makes a man think, makes him question the people who told him Americans were monsters. He didn't turn because of politics or money. He turned because you showed him humanity when you didn't have to." Martinez leaned back. "I'm not going to lie to you, Sergeant. What you did was risky. It violated orders. It could have backfired spectacularly, but it didn't. And because of your choice, we've gained intelligence that will save American lives. Maybe hundreds of them." She stood up, extended her hand. "That's commendable work, Sergeant." Dismissed. Michael walked out in a daze, found his squad in the barracks. They looked at him. "So?" Hayes asked. "What happened?" "The guy they first saved. He's giving up intel. Big intel." Williams whistled. "No kidding. So you're a hero now?" "I'm not a hero. I did what I thought was right." Jackson, arm in a sling but recovering, spoke up. "You know what, Torres? When I was lying there bleeding, watching you choose to save that insurgent, instead of just focusing on us, I was pissed. Thought you were crazy. But now," he shook his head, "now I get it. You weren't just saving him. You were saving the idea that we're different, that we're better, that we don't become the enemy just because we're fighting them." The words hit Michael hard, because that was it exactly. That was the choice he'd made in that room. Not just to save a life, but to save the part of himself that believed life was worth saving. Enemy or ally, combatant or civilian. In that moment, he'd seen a wounded man who needed help, and he'd given it, because that's what medics do. That's what humans do. The war didn't end that day. Michael went on more missions, saved more lives, saw more death and destruction, and all the terrible things humans do to each other when nations go to war. But he never forgot that night, never forgot the choice he made. And every time he was faced with a similar decision, every time someone suggested that some lives mattered less than others, he remembered Rashid, remembered that mercy isn't weakness, it's strength. It's the hardest thing you can do in combat. It's looking at your enemy and choosing to see their humanity instead of just their threat. What Michael didn't know at the time, what he couldn't have known, was how far the ripples of that single choice would spread. Rashid didn't just provide intelligence, he became a bridge. In the months following his recovery, he began reaching out to other mid-level commanders, people he'd fought alongside, people who trusted him. He told them his story, not once but dozens of times. In safe houses and over encrypted communications, he spoke about the American medic who defied orders to save an enemy's life. Some dismissed him as a traitor, others called him weak, but a few, just a handful at first, began to question their own beliefs. If Americans were truly the monsters they'd been told about, why would one risk court-martial to save an insurgent's life? Why would he waste precious medical supplies on someone who just tried to kill his brothers? These questions planted seeds of doubt, and doubt, in a conflict fueled by absolute certainty, is revolutionary. 3 former insurgents eventually surrendered because of Rashid's influence. They provided intelligence that led to the dismantling of a major weapons smuggling network. They helped identify radicalization centers where young men were being recruited and indoctrinated. The intelligence web grew, connection by connection, each thread traceable back to that night in the compound when Michael Torres chose mercy over expedience. Colonel Martinez knew some of this. The broader intelligence community tracked these developments, noted the patterns, recognized the strategic value. But Michael himself remained largely unaware of the full scope. He received commendations, yes, a Bronze Star for valor, recognition for his service. But the classified reports detailing how many lives were saved, how many attacks were prevented, how many families remained intact because of cascading intelligence, those stayed locked in secure files. Michael preferred it that way. He didn't save Rashid for strategic advantage or intelligence value. He saved him because it was the right thing to do. Because the alternative, watching a man bleed out when he had the skills to prevent it, would have cost him something essential, something he couldn't get back. But there were nights when the weight of it all pressed down on him. Nights when he'd lie awake in his bunk, replaying those 3 minutes in the compound, wondering if he'd been selfish, if his need to maintain his own moral compass had truly put his team at greater risk. Jackson had recovered fully. But what if the delay had meant the difference between survival and something worse? What if insurgent reinforcements had arrived during those precious minutes he'd spent saving an enemy? These questions haunted him more than the firefights ever did, because combat was clear. You reacted, you survived, you protected your brothers. But that choice in the compound, that was different. That was deliberate, conscious, a line drawn in the sand that said, "This is who I am, even if it costs me everything." Garrett noticed Michael's struggle, found him one night sitting outside the barracks, staring at nothing, still thinking about it. The lieutenant asked, sitting down beside him, "Every day, you made the right call, Torres. Did I? Or did I just make the call that let me sleep at night?" Garrett was quiet for a long moment. "You know what I've learned out here? There's no such thing as a perfect decision in war. Every choice costs something. Every action has consequences we can't predict. You could have left Rashid, and maybe nothing would have changed. Maybe we'd have gotten out 3 minutes faster, and everything would have been fine. Or maybe that act of cruelty would have hardened something in all of us, made us a little less human, made it easier to make the next brutal choice and the next, until we couldn't recognize ourselves anymore." He stood up, put a hand on Michael's shoulder. "You kept us human that night. That might not show up in any after-action report, but it matters. Trust me, it matters." Those words helped, but the real healing came from an unexpected source. 2 months after the incident, Michael was treating a local interpreter who'd been caught in a marketplace bombing. The man was conscious, in pain but stable, and as Michael worked he started talking. "I heard a story," the interpreter said, "about an American medic who saved an insurgent's life during a raid. Everyone is talking about it. The locals, they cannot believe it. Some say it is propaganda. Others say it proves not all Americans are the same." Michael's hands paused for just a moment. "What do you think?" "I think it gives people hope. My cousin, he was considering joining the insurgency. He is angry, you understand? His brother was killed in a coalition airstrike 2 years ago. Mistaken target, wrong place, wrong time. He wants revenge." But when he heard this story, he hesitated. He said, "If Americans can show mercy to their enemies, maybe there is another way." He did not join. He is working at his father's shop instead, trying to rebuild. The interpreter met Michael's eyes. "One story, one act of mercy. It saved my cousin from a path that would have destroyed him and probably gotten him killed. How many lives is that worth?" Michael felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been tight since that night in the compound. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Neither do I," the interpreter replied. "But it is more than zero, and in war, more than zero is everything." Years later, after Michael had left the service and was teaching emergency medicine at a civilian hospital, he received a package, no return address. Inside was a letter, written in careful English. "Sergeant Torres, you do not know me, but you saved my life. More than that, you showed me that courage is not just about fighting. It is about choosing compassion, even when it is dangerous, even when it costs you. I have left the insurgency. I work now with reconciliation groups, trying to build peace instead of violence. I tell everyone about the American medic who risked everything to save an enemy, who proved that we are all human first and soldiers second. You changed my life that night. I hope this letter finds you well. With gratitude, Rashid." Michael kept that letter framed on his wall, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that the choices we make in our darkest moments define us more than the easy choices we make in the light. That real courage isn't about pulling the trigger. It's about knowing when to heal instead of harm, when to save instead of destroy. The military teaches you to identify enemies, to eliminate threats, to follow orders even when those orders require you to become harder, colder, less human. But Michael learned something else that night in the compound. He learned that the real enemy isn't the person shooting at you. It's the thing inside you that stops seeing them as a person at all. And the only way to fight that enemy is to hold on to your humanity, even when, especially when, everyone is telling you to let it go. That's the lesson Michael Torres carried with him from the battlefield to the hospital, from the moments of chaos to the quiet moments after. That mercy isn't a luxury reserved for peacetime, it's a necessity. It's what separates us from the darkness we're fighting against. And sometimes one act of mercy, one choice to save a life instead of ending it, can change everything, can stop the cycle, can plant a seed of peace in soil soaked with blood. That's the power we all have, the power to choose, to see the human behind the enemy, to extend a hand instead of a fist. Michael Torres made that choice, and in doing so, he didn't just save Rashid's life, he saved his own soul. If this story moved you, if it made you think about mercy, humanity, and the choices we make when everything is on the line. Leave a comment. Tell us about a time you chose compassion over anger, mercy over judgment. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories that challenge what it means to be human in impossible situations, hit that subscribe button, because these are the stories that matter, the ones that remind us who we are and who we can be. Let's keep telling them together.